Thank you for attending this press conference. Earlier this week, we received the sad news. In fact, last week it was that we received the sad news that one of our long-standing members passed away. A member who has been in the People's Progressive Party since the 1950s and who have served our party at every level. From the youth movement, even before the Progressive Youth Organization, or youth organization, was formed in 1955. He was part of the precursor body that led to the formation of that youth movement, and who had been in the struggle for freedom in Guyana, the fight against colonial rule, and the fight for return to democracy in our country. He stood side by side with Dr. Chedi Jagan and other leaders of the People's Progressive Party in pursuing that fight for Guyana and for all of our people. And he served us at various levels. He was a member of parliament for a very long period. Also was at the city council. He served us there, and he'd been elected for almost as long as I can remember, and most people in the party, as at our congresses, to the leadership of the party, the Central Committee of the People's Progressive Party. Cyril Belgrave, one of those unique persons who throughout his life served people, served Guyana, and maintained an approach, even when we were in power, a humble approach where anyone could have spoken with him, and he remained connected to workers' issues. He was one of the leaders of the trade union movement too. He remained concerned about workers' issues throughout his lifetime. Unfortunately, he had to seek attention abroad recently, well, for a number of years because of ailment, and he passed away. But our party will always remember these leaders who helped to define and implement the governing philosophy of our party. And that philosophy was a simple one when it was set up. It was set up to fight for independence for all of our people. A party that does not have a religion because it believes and respects all the faiths. A party that does not discriminate on the basis of people's race because it believes in all the people of Guyana, and a party that does not believe in gender differences. A party that is fiercely patriotic. And it's people like Cyril Belgrave who helped to hone this message and to live this message in spite of all that has been said about him. And what is even harder for a person like Cyril Belgrave is being Afro-Guyanese and being in the People's Progressive Party and in the leadership for all those years from the 1950s. Subjected to some of the most vile abuse simply because he was a member of our party. And he withstood all of this because he was strong and he knew what the party stood for. And he knew that there isn't a shred of racism in the People's Progressive Party, in spite of all the stereotyping and the messages used by our detractors to keep people away from us. And so we would forever be grateful to Cyril Belgrave. I personally, I grew up in the party, and as a boy, always had words of advice, never in a condescending way, never in a haughty way from people like Cyril Belgrave, always there to help. When I was in Ministry of Finance, then as president, I always enjoyed his full support, and I would forever also remember him as one of those exceptional leaders of our party. So tonight, we at Freedom House, we're paying tribute to Cyril Belgrave, and those of you who have the opportunity to, please come to that activity. Of course, we'll have the funeral because his body will come back and the party will pay appropriate tribute at the time when he, on the funeral day. But I thought that it is important that I address this person who has helped to define the People's Progressive Party. The next issue I want to deal with is the sad series of events that have taken place in our country in the past week or so. Robberies, accidents, etc., that have resulted in the loss of many lives of our people. And first of all, I want to address them separately. For the piracy, those who suffered from the acts of piracy in Berbice, our presidential candidate went up there, and also met with several members of the family and witnessed the dire poverty in which people live in those areas, and how important the work of these individuals who went to sea to earn a living, how important their earnings are to maintaining the livelihood of their families. And so I would like on behalf of the People's Progressive Party to publicly express our deepest condolences to the members of the families of those who passed away or were killed, brutally killed in that incident offshore, and also for those who are still searching for the remaining persons who are missing, the two who are missing, that we pray that there be some act of miracle and that they'll be found alive. But we also are very worried that this may not be so, but we hope for a miracle. And so I want to, on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, extend our condolences to all the relatives and members of the family of those in Berbice who have lost lives or who are missing. Then we had the incident where the robbery, and I spoke with Mrs. Stoll about our condolences to another young Guyanese businessman whose life was snuffed out, and there are others who suffered death and injury there. And so that too, that is a senseless killing that our country lost from what I gather was a businessman, although I didn't know him personally. I heard he was a very progressive businessman, and who was creating employment opportunities for many people, etc. So we'd like to extend condolences to family there. And then the horrific accident that took place on the East Bank, where we again lost some of our people. In fact, several persons died there or were killed, 5 persons. And I want to, again, on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, extend our deepest condolences to all of the relatives and family members of those who were killed in that accident, and we hope that those who were in hospital and who were injured would have a speedy recovery. And there are many others that were killed just in front of my office here. Someone was killed on that night. They apprehended the perpetrator. At night, I got a call that someone was killed outside of the office. I think it was around 9 p.m. And apparently, this person, who I gather works somewhere around here, moves frequently, he ran to the office, the security hut here. Obviously, he saw a light and a guard, and then he was still killed. And it's sad that we could not extend, the security could not extend any help. The lone female who was here did not have a cell phone, did not have a radio set, did not have a baton, nor did she have a gun. But she was the state security provided for this office. And so she could not extend any help to him. Luckily, some public-spirited citizens managed to track him, and then they apprehended him. That is the perpetrator. But it was a senseless killing again. And so I also wish to extend to his relatives, his family, our deepest condolences. I know we must not politicize, and we would never attempt to do so, the tragedy of people. And right now, I want us to be respectful of the people who have passed away, because it was not always so in the past. You'd recall in the past when people were killed, when we were in office, that the moment that happened, if you had a crime, the moment that happened was an attempt to politicize it. And I do recall that when even policemen, once when we had the jailbreak, and you had some criminals who targeted policemen, killing them, that you had people, talk show hosts especially, aligned to the PNC at that time, who used to glorify the criminals who killed the police force, or members of the police force, calling them freedom fighters, etc. And I do recall how the police and the army, the joint services, were enemy number one. When they used to mobilize people to go and stand in front of the police or the army when they're going after criminals. And every single time they show up at a crime scene, they were harassed by members of the PNC, protesters from the PNC. You're never going to find us trying to politicize people's tragedy. But there is responsibility. And a government, especially one that touted its security credentials in the pre-2015 period, claiming that it had all these security experts and ex-commissioners of police and ex-chiefs of staff, that it will resolve this situation. And then when the president meeting, I think it was January 18th, 2018, the Chronicle newspaper had PPP all bluff. That was the headline. When Mr. Granger received a report from Russell Combe, the British advisor, security advisor, and he said, with this report, I'd end all crime in Guyana. We recall that. That was a year and a half ago. It was supposed to end all crime in Guyana, and that the PPP was all bluff. And then to see the appalling failures of his government and his security minister on a daily basis, saying things that simply don't make sense without addressing the real problem, then clearly the people of this country have a right, and we have a right, to examine their failures. From the prison breaks, 2 prison breaks with 18 persons losing their lives, 17 I think it was, losing lives in that fire, and then until now, the situation at Lusignan is appalling, and you could have a prison break anytime again. But 2 prison breaks, then a spate of killings, etc. And all that we hear is how well they are doing. On one day, the minister says that the crime figures in Guyana, this is just recently, I think in September, he said that the murder rates and crime stats in Guyana are sensationalized by the media and that the crime situation is not bad. 3 days later, he says that the murder rate in Guyana is higher than even in war-torn Syria. Schizophrenia from the minister, as though he doesn't remember either that or amnesia or something else. He was not in his full senses, you know what I mean, when he was talking. And this is all we're hearing. We're hearing about school children now, primary and secondary school children would help with the fight against crime. We heard about horses and dogs. We heard about decentralization. We heard about a number of things of the police force. But when you come back to reality, that there is low morale now in the police force. I meet with tons of people who talk about this. And low morale has come about largely because of an enormous level of political interference in the management of the police force. Management. Particularly with Felix and the new chairman of the the Police Service Commission, Mr. Paul Slope. We have seen the appointment of people at the senior leadership of the police force, and we know that most of the police, in fact, at the senior level and now at the junior level, are aware that there are people installed there in positions who are now taking political instructions rather than from the leadership, the professional people, policemen in the force. We have seen SOCU, that happened with SOCU. We have seen interference even in the army. We've seen many letters to joint services So they've changed a lot of this stuff in the Army. Now, for example, we had a policy that if you serve a particular period and you have the number of years, I think it's 20 years, that you can retire with full benefits and move on to another job. Remember, our privates, the soldiers at the junior level, they retire very early at 45. So you want to equip them with a skill and allow them to go into other areas to find work. Now I heard they've changed that to you have to serve out the full number of years before you get your full benefits. So if you retire early now, you lose all of your benefits, even if you have the number of years. So all of these things have affected. I don't want to enumerate the list of woes that our joint services now face with this government, because I hear it on a daily basis. Apart from the taking away of their bonus, arguing that it was a bribe to the police, the joint services. So that has happened. We have seen, even in the protests, the instruction. Some police officers have said to me that there are a few individuals who said to them, we have to set an example. At the defense board, they were told at the defense board that they must lock up some protesters, regardless. They must find some people to lock them up, to send a message to the protesters. They must push them, they must keep them a far distant from any venue that the president appears at. That they must now ensure that the president is not embarrassed again. That is the work of the police force, to prevent an embarrassment of the president. So they have to put up roadblocks, barriers everywhere he is now, and walk with a huge entourage of security personnel. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is when morale is low and you divert attention from protecting citizens to protecting the president disproportionately, like 140 policemen had to go to protect the president when he went there over to West Coast to make a speech. Now, those protesters, all that would have happened, he would have been embarrassed a bit by some protesters. We have had to run the gauntlet. When I was president, several times walk through protesters, deal with all of some of the most vile positions against us. We never took those repressive measures to force people away, etc. Because people have a right to say things about you. You're not God. You know, you're not God, so that we must get 140 policemen to prevent an embarrassment of the president. So imagine those 140 persons, policemen. That's equivalent to about 4% of our police force. Must now just go to protect him from being embarrassed, rather than be on the streets to protect our people, and the patrol vehicles, etc. And to compound this, not just him, we have spent tens of millions to equip ministers' vehicles with sirens now. Under the PPP, it was the president, the prime minister, and possibly occasionally the minister of home affairs who used to use sirens, occasionally. Now I've seen cases where some of the most junior ministers, their vehicles were equipped millions of dollars to use siren. 27 of them now we have, forcing people off the road, etc. That's something that will not happen in a PPP government. That will go back to status quo ante. And then the president's entourage. Now, security arrangements for the president must be proportionate to the threat on his life. Not to prevent embarrassment, but to proportionate to the threat against the president. And I don't think that President Granger now has an enhanced threat against his life. But now we have, where you used to have three in a convoy with the president, that's how I traveled for many years. The first, the presidential vehicle, one vehicle in front and one behind. And occasionally, if you're going out the region, then a police vehicle will join you in front, going out to the regions. Now you have, at any given moment, 9 vehicles in the president's entourage. And also, outriders. We never used outriders for the president. They have a series of outriders now too, on motorcycles, stopping people, etc. And so all of this is a distraction. It takes away valuable resources from the police force. And compounding that, every time the president travels now, not only does he have the TSU going with him, but like those ordinary ranks, but they also have to place policemen sometimes at every junction to prevent or to control the flow of traffic. So I've seen, now I can't blame, that was an accident that took place on the East Bank. Nobody can blame the president for the accident. But let us examine some of the things. Clearly, this vehicle, a police vehicle, is part of the president's convoy. The president was not in the convoy at that time, but a police vehicle is assigned to the president's convoy. This was not a vehicle driven by an ordinary policeman. The person who was killed in the vehicle, tragically so, was a presidential guard. And the other one who was injured was a presidential guard. They had several weapons in the vehicle. Several weapons. In fact, I heard 4 weapons that were in the vehicle. They were part of the president's convoy, assigned to his convoy. So these police have been complaining a lot. They're overworked. Now, I remember the same Gordon Mosley, every time when Ramatar did not move in, when there was an issue about moving into State House, they used to harass me too. Why are you not moving into State House? The State House is provided for, security is provided for the president. Why are you not moving in? If you go back and look at the early period when I became president, you will see that was a constant question at press conferences. When are you moving in to State House? Now you have to provide security at the State House and the president's residence. Every night, policemen complain to me. They have to go up and come down back. The whole entourage in the morning and at night. And then the policemen have to be on the road at the juncture, waiting late at night. They're tired, they're demoralized. Demoralized too. And this is, and I think that these guys were late. Nothing should justify speeding, nothing, absolutely nothing. But I think they were late in getting up there to join the convoy, and they were speeding. But we can't blame anyone. It was a horrible accident, and they should not have been speeding. But you have to look at the context of all of this, about what happens in the police force. And therefore, these additional responsibilities of protecting ministers and escorting ministers and huge security entourage with the president, just distracting the police from doing their duty. And we have limited numbers of policemen. And so we now see, so the response has been from their side is to go and try to say, oh, crime happened under the PPP too. And you recall the president speaking about this period. Every time he gets cornered, he speaks about the troubled period. That is the period when the 5 persons escaped from prison And when we had all they went in, took over the community of Buxton with the help of political operatives from the PNC, and then got protection from them. We had all the massacres, and then some were killed or apprehended. So to my surprise, after we've been hearing all along that, they would find out the truth when Roger Khan comes here, the political rhetoric that's been going on by him and the others, the president finally admits that there are no credible evidence or witnesses against Roger Khan. That's in today's paper, he says this. And then he talks about Lindo Creek. But he would not launch the COI into the whole period. He will not. ACDA just called on it. And I've called for him to do that. And ACDA recently called. Why doesn't he launch a commission of inquiry into the entire period, but not just launch it and put a truckman to cook it up? As I said before, an international group. And at that group, we will present who were the ones, the intellectual authors, and who were supplying the criminals, and who were glorifying criminals. And they came up with this fake list of 400 persons that the PPP was supposed to kill. And they keep using that. That's the only thing through the whisper campaign on the ground, trying to polarize our country along racial lines once again, using that. And that list has been discredited. I met someone a few weeks ago who was on the list. That they circulated. You had people from heart attack, you had victims, you had Indo-Guyanese, you had policemen on the list, the bandits who were killed, etc. But they spun that tale for a long, long time in our villages and planted the stereotype about it. But if you were so sure about this, why not launch the COI into all of the killings? What happened at Bartica, and what happened at Agricola, and what happened elsewhere? So this, you're going to continue getting that. They're propagandists trying to blame everyone else for the crime that's taking place now, except in this government. They will not take responsibility for this. So I want once again, I hope that this will change for the sake of our country, that there will be focused on giving the police the authority, the tools, stop interference in the police and the army, and allow them to function and hold them responsible also for transgressions and for lack of performance. So it's not a carte blanche to the police. They have to be accountable to. But you can't demoralize them. You can't take away their tools, take away their personnel, have their personnel every day be diverted into providing security for you because you're worried about being embarrassed by a few protesters, and have crime ravage our people. So I hope that that situation, for the sake of our country, will change. I just wanted to deal with the next issue, which is a daily fight. And it's a saga, it's ongoing. And every morning we wake up and we have to try to fight off another method or another proposal to try to tamper with the election results and disenfranchise Guyanese. It's almost a daily grind. And the chair of GCOM has to be more assertive. If this continues, then GCOM will become a laughing stock and lose any standing with the Guyanese public. It will be totally discredited. So when we thought we got over some hurdles, this week we are hearing now that there is a proposal by Mr. Vincent Alexander to remove the names of the people who did not collect their ID cards since 2008. And that's a fairly large number of people. So you recall, one, that the current chair of GCOM invalidated the elections result, the elections of 1997, because there was an agreement by both parties to use the ID card as the sole means for identification of voters when they go into the polling place. And her ruling was, you don't need an ID card to vote, basically. And that restricted people, therefore it may have disenfranchised people. She ruled against it and invalidated the results of the elections. So guess what is happening now again? So Vincent Alexander brings up this proposal again to take the 20,000 people or so who may not have collected their ID card for one reason, migrated, they're in the interior, they never came out, they're just lazy or not interested, that their names be struck off now from the voters list. So it's even worse. Although you don't need an ID card to vote, you can show up in the polling place, you can use your passport, your ID card, or you can swear to an oath and vote. So they want to take off, not just to cancel the ID cards, which they have a right to do if they want to, but they want to take those names off the voters list. Now, the Chief Justice just ruled that you cannot remove people's names from the voters list if they, for any reasons outside of those outlined in the Constitution. And right now, that's if they're dead or they become insane. Those are the two reasons. You can't remove their names for any other reason. It's unconstitutional. Not because they didn't collect their ID cards, because they didn't show up to check their name on the voters list. Whether they migrated or not, their names have to be, and that's a feature of continuous registration, what we agreed to in the early 2000s. So now this is an attempt to disenfranchise some 20,000 people. Knock their names off the voters list. So imagine you didn't collect your ID card and you didn't go there because you don't need it to vote. But when you show up on election day, you wouldn't be on the voters list. You imagine the confusion. And I think that they want. They want violence, because if you knock people's name off and they go up there and they say, I voted the last time, and the Chief Justice said you can't remove my name, and my name is not on the voters list. They'll get angry. You'll get violence on the day. That's what I think they want. We must fight that to ensure that not a single Guyanese voter is disenfranchised. Not a single Guyanese voter. And we'll have to fight that. But secondly, it's downright illegal. And then imagine after the elections, when APNU loses, they're going to use the same thing that, oh, we took people's name off the voters list because they didn't collect their ID card. That's illegal. So go to court to try to invalidate the results because of what they're proposing now to the commission. Either setting the basis for elections challenge in the future or want to create violence. That's why we have to resist this proposal. And I hope that the commission doesn't buy into this, or the chair, because this will mean disenfranchising people and opening up the results of the elections to a challenge, an election petition. And the second thing they want now is to highlight your names on the voters list, people who didn't register under the house to house. So you have to go through enhanced security checks. You might have to go into a separate room and they strip sort you and all of that sort of thing on the polling day. Pure nonsense. First of all, the house to house registration was ended prematurely. It was shut down by the commission. So not everyone, because as the Chief Justice pointed out, its intent, and they admitted, the intent was to replace the NRR, and that was unconstitutional. They had to shut it down, and they're saying, we shut it down. We didn't come to all your homes, but the homes we didn't come to now have to go through enhanced security check. If anything, it should be the other way around, that people who are registered through the house-to-house registration, they should need enhanced security checks because it was done in the presence of only PNC scrutineers. And we know that there was padding there. So it should be the other way around. But Vincent Alexander now, suddenly with the hope of inserting those names and the padded names there, he hopes to get them inserted into the voters list. Maybe, I don't know at what stage, the PLE or the RLE, but they're hoping to do that. Well, we have to worry about that because if you go through the claims and objection now, when you go and you check your name and it's okay. And if you go and you re-register, because we urge people to re-register, that's a first-time registrants, then you could very well end up, if they succeed in what they're doing, which we hope they will not, because we're glad that right now there's more and more international presence here, that you will find that your records could be replaced or superseded by another record. It will create a ton of confusion. But I don't want to complicate things now because we'll fight that battle at the appropriate time. But this one about the ID card and highlighting people's name on the OLE is pure nonsense, and it's designed by Alexander and the others to either throw elections in turmoil, create violence, or set us up for an elections petition. And we are going to fight this aggressively. So the third issue has to do with the matter that went to court yesterday. And this, I see a report here. Chief Justice denies constitutional directive compelling President and Cabinet's resignation. So clearly the coalition will tout this as a victory. And I've seen, well, I know that this decision will be appealed. But if you read the decision clearly, what this speaks about is treachery on the part of the government. It's lack of integrity and credibility. Now the CCJ, the Chief Justice said, in my view, the CCJ did make a pronouncement on the resignation of the President and Cabinet. Given the language of the CCJ, the effect of the no confidence motion was the immediate resignation of the Cabinet. But the court clearly stated that notwithstanding this, the tenure in office of Cabinet and President is on a different footing. So the CCJ refused the consequential orders. That is, to name an election date and an order to get the Cabinet to resign. And what did it say? The CCJ said the language of the Constitution is clear. It doesn't need gloss over. It doesn't need interpretation, etc. And that people must honor it with integrity. And that is the problem, that the CCJ and the Chief Justice still believe that this group here that is squatting in office now has any integrity and will honor any rule, constitution, provision of the Constitution, or any court ruling that will prevent them from abusing state resources for campaigning purposes, or that will stop them from the continuation of the large-scale plunder of our resources. And they need the cabinet to do that. So when the Chief Justice said they put them on a different footing, that is a caretaker capacity, a caretaker government cannot do the things that they are doing. Cannot do. In fact, if you look at the convention around caretaker governments around the world, you will never see this sort of visibility. Everything goes to a neutral footing. So right now, they are the outreaches that they keep doing, the handouts, the government handouts that are like used to buy stuff that are green and often stamped. I saw DPI put out a brochure now, which is a campaign brochure. All of these things in a caretaker system will disappear. Ministers will not be able to do the things that they are doing. So Patterson still talks about funding, a whole new article about funding for the Lethem Road, and he's going to tender now for the Lethem Road. This is October 12th. He says he's going out to tender. And the newspaper reports everything about the British program again. But the people have said you cannot touch the money until after the elections. But he keeps saying we're going out for tender because we have some money in the ministry. How much money he has? And let me say something. Patterson does not go out to tender for anything unless there is something in it for, I wouldn't say whom. And so this is what's going on. They go out to tender for this. He goes to the two shows and lie to them about how they have applied for grants. Caretaker governments can't apply to grant to the Indian government now. I hope that they understand this, but they're applying. I saw, consistent with this, I'm happy that Norway has said that the money is off limits until the elections are held, and that the status of the government is a legal one. So all of the other funding agencies should follow the Norwegian example, that none of their funding can be used. And this is about the new funding. So we have to now examine what they're using already, because some of the other funds that we got from the LCDS that they tried to block when they were in opposition, they're using that to campaign too, like for telecommunication, etc. So then Patterson talks about, he goes on for a whole long while lying to the two shows about the Lethem Road and everything else. The British have not decided, made a definitive position to fund it. So this is not what a caretaker government does. And therefore, the entire court system now still maintains that they should act with integrity. And I doubt you're going to get anyone, the courts or anyone, to get a shred of integrity out of this bunch. So Jordan has signed, he made 18 orders under the Public Corporation Act, gazetted on the 31st of August. 18 plots of land in Linden. Riverside land handed over. He shouldn't be signing these orders. Imagine a caretaker government, minister in a caretaker government signing orders under the Public Corporation Act to transfer land to people. True, and it's done all through on behalf of NISIL. Now, NISIL will not tell us until now who got land, a list of people who got the land and that we need for housing development in the Ogle area. We don't know, but we heard it's a ton of cronies, all the land going up to Enmore, the lands that were taken after the closure of the estates. They've been handing out land at Diamond and all the tracks close to where the road will be going all the way to past Diamond. We wouldn't get that information. Although they're supposed to advertise it, we wouldn't get that information from NISIL. Some Trinidadian companies got huge tracts of land at Wales and some over here too, without any public tender. We wouldn't know that. This is all happening now. And it's all taking place under Jordan's watch. So this is not how caretaker governments operate. Even when you had full powers, you don't operate that way. Imagine, and that is why I urge you to look at the land sales, the companies, etc., and any state asset that was sold in that period look at the reports that we have, the report that is in the public domain. It identifies the process through which it went through. Now we don't have that, and Jordan signed 18 orders to transfer lands to people. Many of these people are from next door neighbors to him and all of that stuff. I see some from Sugarcane Avenue Street and stuff like that. Some of these people. So this is what's going on here. That this caretaker stuff, so we may have to end up all the way back to the CCJ because the CCJ had intended that elections be held by the 18th of September, and they probably thought that the caretaker capacity would be for that period from June to the 18th of September. They never contemplated this. And that is why they thought, we don't need to give the order. The Constitution is clear, 3 months, elections in 3 months. The cabinet should act on everyone in a caretaker capacity. Now that expired on September 18th. So now they're downright illegal. All the acts are illegal as far as I'm concerned. Cabinet or no cabinet, this cabinet is illegal as far as I'm concerned. That caretaker ruling from the CCJ ended on the September 18th. They're illegal as far as I'm concerned. So all the wickedness that's being done and baptized by cabinet in some cases and by individual ministers, then it's not going to fly. All of these are making it clear there'll be consequences for people. And that's why we said we are not going back to the parliament to extend the life of the government. The government's life has not been extended from March to 21st. It was not extended. And so that was the only way that these things could be done legally if you had extended the life of the government. The Gael scandal. This is just when kickbacks and involving the ministry and the Gael, etc. This is a routine thing. I'm surprised. In fact, I must commend the people for actually being bold enough to come out. Because a ton of people come here every week. They don't want their names mentioned. But this is what's happening. So apart from that, the government has been organizing through the Go Invest and the Department of the Energy, the two new campaign arms for APNU. So I see now they have, first of all, this government being illegal in the way I just explained, cannot define policy. Even if you're a caretaker, much less illegal, you cannot define policy. You can't address policy matters. You can't change policy. So I wonder what they are going to say to a conference that they're setting up here soon. So they have this conference called GPEX. Now, from what I gather, that to participate, you have to pay $2,000 US, and this is funded by the Department of Energy, Go Invest, and Exxon, and a few others, some company out of the UK, I think. Some media group, a Valiant Business Media. So you have to pay a lot of money to be a participant there, 2,000 US dollars, which puts it out of the reach of many Guyanese. So this group from abroad will come and try to define the oil and gas sector for us too. That is what is happening now. The government has farmed this out to foreigners. So you're going to have Granger go and make a nice, great speech. And let me make it clear that maybe we will protest this event, protest the waste of money. The waste of money that is taking place now, this one. So I'm putting the sponsors on notice too. I'm putting them. So you could very well see a protest about this. This is for the abuse of state resources now. We're bringing this to the attention of the international community because that's part of the process of free and fair elections, but more so because they're illegal. They shouldn't be using any money. But in even a normal situation, when you approach elections, there has to be some parity in the use of resources. But this one here, the GPEX one, and so they have greeting remarks from the US Secretary of Energy. The US Secretary of Energy is not coming here. We have confirmed that. So this is part of their marketing tool to get people to pay the fees for the conference. And then the highlight of it, people may want to come and listen to the US Secretary of Energy. He's not coming. And then, well, nobody will come for the opening address for His Excellency, Mr. Granger. So, but he will be there, and I want to hear what policy wise. Well, we don't want to hear it. We know what he's going to say. He could say about this sector, why they're not protecting Guyanese. And so I recently saw at the convention center. We can't get the convention center. It was built under the PPP. We can't use it for any activity. But they gave it to a Trinidadian firm to host an activity there to lecture Guyanese. The sector and its opportunities are being defined now by foreigners from in the Department of Energy to everywhere else. The foreigners must be, we have to capitalize on their experience, both in terms of the provision of services and advice, but it must all be advisory to a unit in government that is indigenously, nationally determined. This advice must come in and be processed along the lines of what is good for our people. That must be the primary concern. And of course, ensuring that those who invest in Ghana get a decent return for their investment, but the primary consideration. Right now, all of these things are being defined out of there. So I see now also the AFC, Mr. Nigel, they're going to have a series of lectures using again the Theta Guild to talk about oil and gas and stuff like that. And I don't want to say much, but on the ExxonMobil's contract, Mr. Hughes' address is listed as on behalf of the oil company, Exxon and the others. His local office is the office of these foreign oil companies. And it raises a key question. How is it that a key leader of the AFC was representing in the renegotiation these oil companies from abroad, and then on the other hand, another leader of the AFC, Trotman, was negotiating on behalf of the government? It's a lot of conflict of interest scenarios. Everything is being determined for a few people. Corruption. Every day, I was just on the road a few days ago, I hear more horror stories about what is happening in the sector, especially to Guyanese in the sector. So this here, I want to put the sponsors on notice, especially the Department of Energy and the Go Invest, because the Go Invest is married neck deep in corruption too. that this activity will receive our attention, and it will receive our attention if it goes ahead. Now this brings me to foreign companies have to respect our labor laws. And therefore, I saw a very strange thing. And it's either, so Keith Scott issued a cease order to Troy Resources. And then Amnali came and rescinded it. And the whole country must be wondering, on what basis did he issue the cease order first? Clearly, it must be a report. And what did the report find that led to the issuance of the cease order? What was the finding of the safety officers there? And so, and why did Amnali have to rescind this? So it's either Keith Scott acted arbitrarily, contrary to the findings of the safety officers, and Amnali had to rescind it, which points to the corruption in the government too, and the incompetence, or it's that Keith Scott justifiably issued the order on the basis of a report, and Amnali interfered politically, which puts at risk more workers. So either way, we have to dig into this issue. It's either there is corruption, which siding with a company, or arbitrary action by a minister that could harm the company. But either way, it is either corruption or it's incompetence. And this is typical of this government. And just today, again, we see another manifestation of it. It's hundreds of these. They're too numerous to mention. I think maybe let me don't go on. I have 4 more issues, but thank you very much. Let me, and there, yes.
Is the PPP considering or vetting Mark Phillips for its prime ministerial candidate?
Let me say that I've outlined, first of all, I've outlined a process that we intend to follow in order to select the prime ministerial candidate. I've made it clear that that person will come from the civic component of our slate. I met with Mark Phillips, and I said to him that we would welcome him on our team, that he is going to contest the elections. I believe he's a great person with, I know of his skills, not necessarily personally, but I know of his skills in terms of finance and his security credentials, and I've heard a lot about his integrity. And he would be a welcome addition to our team. I made it clear to him that the process that we would follow, I don't know if any one of our members will nominate him. It's very likely that his name could be nominated too, because members of the Central Committee, the members of Parliament, anyone could nominate a person, and we will treat each name on its merit and then make a decision. And I said, we cannot promise anything, but there is a space for you in the team. And he said, I have no expectation. I know the process, and I want to be part of that team, the team going forward, because they'd be so, the prime ministership is not the only thing we're looking for. Let me make it clear. We are not trading positions. We're not going to do like what AFC and PNC doing now, to say, oh, you hold on to this ministry and we hold on to this one, which one got a bigger budget so we could hustle more, etc. The PPP will go into these elections making no commitments. We are working on a platform that is inclusive. We want progress for all Guyanese, regardless of their race, their religion, wherever they live. We want to make sure that our people are safe in their homes, good quality education, our oil resources work for everyone. We believe there are lots of people who have great skills within our ranks and who will be part of our team through the civic, and many individuals out there who will have to tap and offer their skills in the new government, because there'd be huge opportunities. Right now we're talking about thousands of young professionals trained to manage, to create a national core of managers for the oil and gas sector. Thousands of opportunities. So we are not going to be engaged with no party or individual in trading positions. You know, you're only coming in because of this or that. And Mark Phillips said, I want to be part. I like the vision, I like the program for the country. He's a patriot too, and he wants to be part of the team. When we come to selecting the prime ministerial candidate, the names are going to come up, we'll have a discussion, and then we'll make a selection. But it's not dependent, him being part of the team is not dependent on that. So
When
that,
do we expect nomination to happen?
we expect nomination day to be in January. So we will address this issue towards the end of November. I think towards the end of November.
On the matter of GCOM, there is a procedure laid out in the National Registration Act for cancellation of voters. And yesterday, Mr. Corbyn, Commissioner, told Kaiser News that in seeking to cancel these some thousand names, that they followed that procedure twice over the past few years, and that they're going to follow it again.
Well, that's precisely. That was before you had a ruling from the Chief Justice, when the matter was never challenged before. And so a lot of things that were done in 2008, remember in 2008, when you did the new house-to-house registration, you replaced the NRR at that time, the register. That is illegal now. So what he did 100 years ago, Mr. Corbyn and the others, they can't do now because the Chief Justice ruling is out. The matter is clear. Okay, all right. Thank you very much.